In tonight's Tax Insider, the corporate inversion quagmire. Last night we told you that Pfizer and Allergan are pursuing the biggest buyout in healthcare history. It's a $160 billion deal that will essentially send a huge U.S. corporation to Ireland. For more, I'm joined by Steve Ellis, Vice President of the nonpartisan Taxpayers for Common Sense. Steve, what is a corporate inversion and why would Pfizer pursue one?
Sure, Morris. A corporate inversion is where a U.S. corporation acquires a smaller company overseas and basically shifts its headquarters there, trying to avoid U.S. taxes and a higher corporate tax rate. And Ireland's become a favored destination for many of these companies because they have a much lower corporate tax rate.
Now, in 2004, Congress tried to curb inversions by saying U.S. companies couldn't simply reincorporate abroad. A law was passed saying in order to become a foreign-owned corporation, they must merge with a foreign partner, even if the partner is much smaller. So it's no coincidence Allergan is much smaller than Pfizer. Did Congress create this problem?
I wouldn't say created this problem, but basically you establish a set of rules, and some company with a smart lawyer is going to figure out a way to exploit those rules.
Yeah, they left some loophole. It was a loophole.
Yeah, exactly. And so in this case, though, it's interesting because technically this is not an inversion under the law because Pfizer is actually being acquired by the much smaller company Allergan, and Pfizer will retain, the Pfizer shareholders will have 56% of the company. Allergan will have 44% of the company. 60% is the threshold for an inversion, so Pfizer skates under that, and they take their effective tax rate from 25% down to 17 or 18%.
President Obama has taken steps to reduce the tax benefits of inversion. Why didn't they work?
Well, you're very limited because you have the code, the existing tax code, and all they can do is try to come up with rules and regulations that interpret that code. If you don't change the underlying law, you're not going to be able to really have a fundamental change. And so they've been just sort of niggling around the edges and trying to get at some of the things like earnings stripping and some of the skinnying of profits and things along those lines. But it's not big enough to actually have a huge impact.
All right, so we're back to Congress. There's been some bipartisan outrage on Capitol Hill this week. Will it lead to action like comprehensive tax reform? Because really, why blame these corporations? Maybe we ought to just have some tax reform here and not charge them an arm and a leg.
Well, certainly that's what we would hope, that this really lights a fire under Congress as if they shouldn't have already had that fire going. And we really do get comprehensive tax reform. There's still going to be pretty stiff headwinds because different people have different ideas, and certainly the closer you get to 2017 and a new president, there's always a delay, and each party thinks they're going to have a better shot with with whoever's next person in office. And so if anything's going to happen, it has to happen soon. But the prospects are not great, but this certainly will help fuel the fire.
Steve, let's discuss the possible Ryan effect. House Speaker Paul Ryan is a self-proclaimed policy wonk. He's done a lot of research on tax reform. Will his rise have any impact on this discussion?
Well, he certainly is a policy wonk, and he had gotten to being chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, which is the tax writing committee in the House. And so certainly he knows a lot of the ins and the outs of the issues, but a lot of this is going to be not about what makes great tax law, but what makes great tax sausage. What's actually going to get a legislative accomplishment done in a deal making. And when you look at the last tax reform in 1986, almost 30 years ago, you had a deal maker in Dan Rostenkowski in the House and Bob Packwood in the Senate.
Steve Ellis, Vice President of the nonpartisan Taxpayers for Common Sense. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Morris.